to the SEO Weekly, where queries are weird, advice is controversial, and everything depends. I'm your host, Garrett Sussman of iPullrank Agency, and well, last week was the big Google I/O Summit, I input, O output, where they give you all the updates on everything Google, all the different products, and naturally, there's a lot of updates around search. Let's dive in. So, in the I/O 2-day event, we learned about 3 core things when it comes to search, which I found really interesting. First off is Google Lens. Now, I don't know if people use Google Lens a ton. Basically, it's a feature that's on Google Search where you're actually using your camera to search. And Google is trying to enhance it. Apparently, according to them, 8 billion people are using it every month, or there are 8 billion searches. I asked Twitter to see if anyone's actually using it, and there are some really fascinating use cases. You know, with the pandemic happening, I haven't really thought about travel, but a lot of people use Google Lens to translate signs when they're in a foreign country that uses a different language. Hikers use it when they're looking at plants or animals to identify them. E-commerce. Someone actually said, Andrea was like, yeah, I bought a chair using Google Lens. I was at a friend's place, saw the chair, used Google Lens, found it online, and bam. Well, Google wants to make your searches using Google Lens even better. And so what they're introducing is this idea of Multisearch, which is like, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but sometimes you need to add a little context for the search. So what you can do is you can take a picture, use your camera on Google Lens, and then add an actual query that goes along with the picture to enhance the search. In fact, they're going to use it for local related searches. So say you want to find, a restaurant that has a specific meal, you could use a picture of the meal and then add near me in the search, and then it would provide you with recommendations for local restaurants. So it's an interesting application. Another one is kind of this whole scene exploration. So say you're at the grocery store and you want to buy, dark chocolate for a friend that doesn't contain nuts. You'd be able to break out your phone and kind of show it, and then it would overlay with, augmented reality, different attributes that are related to what you're looking for. Now, the only issue, this is native to a lot of Android phones. For the iPhone, you'll need to be using a Google search app to actually use Google Lens, but it'll be interesting to see in the context of MUM and the relationships between videos and pictures and text and Google's understanding of natural language processing, how they'll be able to surface really interesting search results using images and search, multi-search. Cool, I'm paying attention. The second big thing was all around inclusivity. When it comes to, historically, tech hasn't really done well when it comes to identifying different skin tones. Darker skin tones don't really show well in pictures, and this is part of the technology issue. The other thing is in search, why is it that if you're looking for like beauty makeup products, all the images that come up are like white models, That's problematic. It's a problem. So what Google's actually doing is they're teaming up with Harvard professor Dr. Ellis Monk to identify the Monk scale, which is all these different kind of variations of skin tone, and incorporating that into the machine learning so that you're getting better, more diverse, inclusive results in search engine. For instance, if you're looking at the example of the makeup, and you'll be able to filter by skin tone. Now, is it going to be perfect? No, I think it's still going to be problematic. What if you're able to maybe in the future identify your own skin tone so that that's the default? Because I assume the default's still going to be like problematic white skin tone, lighter skin tone, which doesn't necessarily solve the problem of inclusivity. Maybe that's something that changes or they continue to improve upon. The other thing is when it comes to like structured data, Google's going to be providing more inclusive search term data attributes that creators can use in their content, because Google can't necessarily predict how things are. They need help of us being able to label all the content that we create. So they're going to create more tags that can be used and attributes that can be used for inclusive search results. The third big thing is something they've actually had for a little bit, but they're making the process better with personal identifiable information. So naturally, you wouldn't be able to find social security numbers or credit card results in search results, which are, really important for privacy. Well, they're upping the level when it comes to home addresses or emails or phone numbers. You can get that information, or you will be able to get that information removed through a streamlined process, filling out a form and getting that request to be removed from Google. It's something they're taking very seriously. It's about time, because getting doxxed sucks, or having people, especially in unsafe situations, being able to easily find your information is a massive safety problem. So the whole Google I/O was a great event. I'm also going to talk about a few other examples of how they provided more instructional and informational content. One other thing that they released, John Mueller did a great video all about search updates, where he talked about how you can use the Search Analytics API to create some really cool tools to really dive into search. Actually gave a shout out to Dave Smart's tool and Screaming Frog. So that's a cool video to check out, as well as there is a new report coming to Google Search Console that will help you identify how your videos are being indexed and if there's any problems with video indexing. For instance, if one of your videos doesn't have a thumbnail, this new report in Google Search Console will be able to help you, identify that issue, solve it, and then validate the fix for indexing, because Google's going hard on video, whether it's search results showing more like short videos, the YouTube Shorts or TikTok, or even Facebook's going hard on short videos, surfacing that video search has never been more important. It's only going to grow in importance. So Google I/O, lots of great stuff. So kind of unrelated but related to Google I/O, on the 10th, there was a new dev documentation page that appeared when it comes to metadata, what's valid and what's invalid. Just another doc that they kind of go through what you should include in the head versus what you shouldn't, like iframes. Another resource for you to just pay attention to. Speaking of resources, there was a bit of a debacle last week where Google came out with a SEO certification program, right? Where Google, the actual Google employees, are teaching you how to be an SEO. It's on Coursera, and it's like official. Now, if it's official, you gotta assume that it is like how Google thinks about search. Now, Danny Sullivan, Search Liaison, actually spoke up of there's not necessarily a relation between this course and the actual search team. Why is it a problem? Because Gianluca Fiolari was going through the course, and there's a part where the course actually tells you, how to avoid keyword stuffing. And the idea was make sure that the word count of your articles are longer than 300 and you have less keyword density than 2%, which is not how search works. That's not how we think about keywords anymore, especially as we move more to a semantic kind of SEO framework, which I'll talk about momentarily. But it was called out. It's been addressed that section of the course has been removed, but it highlights why it's problematic when Google puts out an official SEO certification course that many people will kind of see as gospel, and even that's incorrect. What are your thoughts on Google SEO certification? Pros, cons? Should it not happen? Should it? Love to hear your thoughts. Leave it in the comments. So Krista Saiden, who is speaking of Google, GA4 expert. She helped work on the product. She's been a major evangelist for GA4, and we found out a few weeks ago that Universal Analytics is going to be sunset, and GA4 is going to replace it in 2023. She did a really great, Twitter thread shout out to the SEOs that it's not apples to apples when it comes to the different versions of Google Analytics, and you might be looking for a landing page report in GA4 that doesn't exist. She gave a really simple, easy to use step-by-step on how you can build out that report. One of the nice nuances of GA4 is it's very customizable. You can easily create any of your reports and very quickly put it right into your main kind of UI dashboard. So she breaks that down, did it for iPullrank. It's fun. I like being able to look at my landing pages and the performance in GA4 very easily. So I'm getting used to it. I'm liking it. Do you guys like GA4? You let me know. But great Twitter thread from Krista. Follow her for anything GA4 related. On Thursday, there was a webinar by DeepCrawl about the value of website accessibility, building human-first experiences with a ton of resources. This was by Ashley Berman-Hale, Jamie Indigo, and Jess Peck of Local SEO Guide. Awesome webinar. They basically just went through a whole list of different websites and people and tools to improve the accessibility of your website. You can just see it in Jess's and Ashley and Jamie's Twitter thread. They just kind of go through all of these different tools. So the link to that is in the description, and even at the bottom you can see the different people to follow there. Accessibility is so key. I mean, being able to use a website is something a lot of people take for granted, and yet there are factors of like when it doesn't include alt text, or when it doesn't include screen reader capabilities due to JavaScript rendering. Like, that sucks. That's unfair, and it's bullshit. It's bullshit for people who can't see or can't hear. So take that into consideration when building your own website. Great resources from the DeepCrawl team and Jess there. Semantic SEO, I love it. I think it's fascinating. Basically, this idea that the web is becoming more and more made up of entities, concepts that are tied to different attributes and relations. Well, Olaf Kopp from Germany put together a really great article that was posted on Search Engine Land, and he had a follow-up podcast interview with Marie Haynes on Search News You Can Use, talking all about entities and EAT. Basically, what he breaks down is the relationships and how important they are to building expertise, authority, and trustworthiness when it comes to being found for a certain type of topic. If you want to appear in that topic, Olaf talks all about how the relationships and the strengths of the relationships that you have with the different topic or other players or other respected trusted authorities in that sort of topic will influence how high you rank in search for a variety of keywords that are tied to that topic and your entity. So he goes on to talk about different examples of these relationships and how he is very bullish on PR and marketing, and how partnerships are going to play a huge role in the future of the web. That everything holistic when it comes to semantic SEO is it's not just what's on your website, obviously that's super important, but it's all the different relationships that appear. So whether you show up in a certain news article, or you have a partnership collaboration with another company that's somewhat related to a topic that your audience is in, it's something to think about when it comes to building out your SEO strategy to work in partnership with other brands, other experts, other authorities, and develop those relationships so the strength of your entity as an authority grows. Check out that article. Check out the interview. You can even go, there's a really cool tool that he pointed out from the Google NLP API where you can see how Google interprets different things as entities. So you type in a sentence, like I typed in, how I am the host of the SEO Weekly, and Google, the NLP API, identified how it thinks about those words or those phrases as entities. For instance, the SEO Weekly is a work of art. So obviously Google has that figured out. It is. It's a work of art at the SEO Weekly. Great article. Check that out. On Moz, Amanda Milligan of Stacker she's become like the go-to expert when it comes to link building and thinking about link equity in the sense, external link equity in the sense of SEO and backlinks. She wrote this article thinking about like this link stack that you want to think about as a digital PR SEO specialist. And she broke it down into 4 categories. So it's like passive link earning, creating content that's so good, typically like data focused, that just earns links. Andy Crestodina of Orbit Media is like amazing at this. He's done so many great kind of studies and reports that people just want to link to. Second one is targeted link earning. So focusing on content that already exists, and then doing outreach to get people to link specifically to that piece of content. So it's not like a net new, you're just kind of building up the authority in the SEO for an existing piece of content. Site authority link earning, so going back to digital brand mentions and PR, when you get doing outreach to different journalists, again, when you get written about and included in their articles, that's just building the site brand authority, because typically those articles will only link back to your homepage, the main entity of your business, the main web domain. So including that in your process and your link stack. And then finally, niche link earning. So same idea of journalism, but specifically for your industry, your specialty, your niche, if you will. And I agree with Amanda, it really makes sense, especially if you're building up your authority as an entity in a specific niche. To be written about and earn links in that niche is going to only increase your authority, trustworthiness, expertise, the EAT. So great article by Amanda on Moz. Adriana Stein wrote a cool article for Screaming Frog all about keyword mapping and SEO site architecture. Basically, she gave a really step-by-step process on how to map out your keywords to your sitemap, kind of reverse engineering, but thinking about what the keywords are, what the search intent for those keywords are, how they map to specific types of pages on your website, whether there's like product pages or case studies or services or your homepage or your blog categories, mapping all together and then building out your site architecture that way based on the keywords. I love that she gave step-by-step how-tos with that. She even provides a template that you can use so you can visually revisit that each quarter or annually, depending on what your resources look like. But appreciate a good step-by-step tutorial like Adriana put together there. I missed this one last week, but Olga Zarzycna put together an awesome list of 40 plus SEO podcasts. Appreciate the shout out for Rankable, but she goes through like there are a lot of SEO podcasts out there, and I adore a bunch of them, whether it's Morty Oberstein's SEO rant, Alita Solis's Crawling Mondays, Aaron Sparks's Edge of the Web radio podcast. Gosh, there are so many good ones. Women in Tech SEO with Sarah McDowell and Arij Abouali. I'm curious, what are your favorite podcasts? Let me know in the comments, because I'm always looking for new podcasts to check out. There's so many good ones out there. A couple of technical articles. Benjamin Beckwith wrote Deep Crawl. It's funny. It's like when someone starts coming out with content, you start noticing like a whole bunch at the same time. It's like they plan to roll it out all at once. But Deep Crawl had a great kind of 14 common SEO issues for publishers that Benjamin wrote all about. Whether it's not having enough evergreen content, or working on category page optimization, or having an organizational name mix match, or working on your XML sitemaps. He breaks down all 14 of these. Just helpful way to go through as a publisher, making sure that you have all of your technical SEO eggs in the same basket, or ducks in a row. I don't know what idiom I'm using, but good article by Benjamin. And my friend Philip Petrescu, the CEO of Advanced Web Ranking, did their own Core Web Vital study for 2022. Just great insight looking at the data in terms of what percentage of the internet is actually passing the Core Web Vitals. Some of the big takeaways that he found were that the higher ranking in Google, the lower LCP is. So in terms of like the largest contentful paint, making sure that loads as quickly as possible. One of the major reasons that they found that it wasn't was because of video. So really make sure that you have your lazy loading sort of set up, reduce the resources. Actually, speaking of improving your LCP and your Core Web Vitals, Phil Walton, as part of Google I/O, did a nice little video breakdown of how you can improve your website, specifically focusing on the LCP. So his 4 recommendations, and he shows why the load times are so important to speed up the site and improve that metric. Now, ultimately, Philip Petrescu did find that it was Core Web Vitals is a ranking factor, but it's also really a big user experience focus, to make sure that someone doesn't want to wait for your website to load. So what did Phil Walton do? He talked about to ensure that the LCP starts loading as early as possible, to ensure that it can render as soon as it's finished loading, that you should reduce the load time of the resource without sacrificing quality, and deliver the initial HTML as soon as possible. So cool breakdown of how you can go and think about doing all those things. I really appreciated that video from Phil. And then finally, Oliver H.G. Mason had a fun little article all about, so he's looking at Google Search Console, and how they have the different status codes for potential issues that come up, whether it's response codes or types or, purposes or things like that. So what he did is he noticed that the URL param, so for file type equals, and it was response 1, response 2, response 3, and Google actually has really great documentation breaking down what all those responses were. So he found identified the number with the actual response issue and kind of tied them together in a fun little article. It's just interesting. It's interesting to see how Google lays that out, and definitely check out that document, because the development doc from Google actually lays out what's good, what's bad, what you don't need to worry about. It's always a good reference to have in general. That's it. Lots happening. Most of it Google I/O, the big Google I/O news. I'm very curious to know how you felt about it, if you were able to watch the recap or just the things that I pointed out. Do you think that these updates, will you use Google Lens? I don't know. I'm curious. As always, I hope you enjoyed the SEO Weekly. My name is Garrett Sussman of iPullrank Agency. If you did, please subscribe. Please share and and give us some love. Leave me a comment. Tell me how you feel about it. I appreciate you watching. We will catch you next Monday. That's about it for me. Have a good one.